Guys, it is Tyler Genius. This is my first video tutorial, so hopefully it goes well. Shout out to Produced by Scar to let me be on his channel. Hopefully I'll be doing this more often and you'll see my face more as we jump into more videos. So today we're going to start with a Meek Mill type beat. I just made this joint like 2 days ago maybe, and kind of finished up last night. 3 things to know about Meek Mill beats. Big drums. Big drums, vintage samples. I mean, if you listen to Championships, you can see that he loves those vintage samples, and just an epic sound. Like overall, just make sure that everything is epic. Now this goes to say for any beat that you make sure it's engaging all the way through. Something that Meek Mill does when he selects his beats is he really makes sure that that beat is engaging all the way through, that there's no repetitiveness to it. I mean, right off the bat with the intro from Nick Paps, who produced it, you start off with a Phil Collins sample. Vintage, epic drums come in like 40-something seconds later, and it's different. You know, it's not arranged like you would expect it to be arranged. So I'm gonna play this beat for you. And then I won't play it all the way through, and then we'll kind of dissect it and jump into it. I usually start most of my tracks with a 48 intro like this. So let me jump into the hook here. Kind of coming to verse 1 here. Change up the beat pattern a little bit. And the 808 pattern. Kind of coming to like this bridge area, or a pre-hook area, you know, you could say. And then back into the hook. And then on the last part of this track, we have the outro piece, which is just a very concentrated part of the tracks. 808 and percussion. Dope. So let's jump into this here. Let's just start with the melody. I don't sample a lot. A lot of the times I'm creating from scratch. Either way is dope. It's just a personal preference for me. So yeah, so this beat actually started not on this sample. I was actually using this sample right here. I have it. So it's a Pink Floyd sample, which I'm not going to play anymore. Let's hope to God that doesn't shut this video down. But it was a Pink Floyd sample, and it just was not hitting. So I went on a Splice. If you don't use Splice, you should use it. Big mistake if you're not. So this was on here. It is a Gatsby-themed sample with a great trumpet sound. I will say this. It was a bitch to get this thing timed and flexed correctly, but we finally did it. So I had the drums down. They weren't as tracked out as they are now, but I had them down, and I played this sample over it, and it really started to fit in the pocket, and so that's kind of what I went for. So the biggest thing to remember when you're making a Meek Mill type beat is big drums, and this goes for every beat, and I can say this every time. Sound selection, sound selection, sound selection. Before you even start laying things down, have sound selection in your mind. That needs to be priority number 1, because that's going to minimize how much you need to actually mix your beat. It's going to attract the ear a lot more if all the sounds fit well together. And it's just an overall better sounding record. when your sound selection's on point. So that's kind of what I started with, and I'll go ahead and we'll jump into the drums here. So this is a drum pattern with no 808. I have 3 stacks of hi-hats. Now, as a producer, you should be obsessed with hi-hats, especially if you're a trap producer. They're going to be your best friend. They're going to really help what allow you to have a super dynamic track. You can pan your hi-hats. You can 16s, triplets, dotted. There's so much you can do to make them move. And then there's also different pockets within the track that you need to try to put them in order to do that. So that's what I did here. I have my open hats, my FX hats, which I just call them FX, but what they are is this. So they're my pitched and my panned hi-hats underneath my bass hi-hat, which is literally just a 16th. I had to think about that. So you stack those together. And I was very intentional on making that 16th very, very straightforward because I want it to drive and I want to push. So I don't want it to be too artsy or dynamic. That's why I've got this layered one here. So if we move up to the kick, you'll notice that the kick does not have a lot of low end, and that's intentional too. Mainly because, and I'm sure you guys know this as producers, but if you don't, your kick should not be hitting with as much energy as you think it should. That's your 808 is made for that, right? Your kick is there to knock. You hear that in tracks, you hear that kick just knocking. That's because it's EQ'd a certain way. So this is without the EQ. You can hear a lot of that low end. This is with the EQ. So we're cutting a lot of that energy out. It's at 64. I could probably bring it up just a little bit more. I'm boosting at 100, 108 at 5 decibels. And at 500, which if you're anything like me when you were learning how to produce or mix, boosting at 500 on a kick is like the biggest sin, but here I am doing it. So you can do it too. Obviously there's a boxiness here, and you can use that to your advantage to create a really nice knocking kick. So that's what I did there. Now if we pair that with the 808, you'll be able to see the value in taking out some of that low end. I've also sidechained the kick to the 808, so you'll be able to hear that. I use Neutron too, which I can do in a later video. I personally prefer sidechaining with Neutron or any type of dynamic equalizer for many reasons. One being that using a compressor, you're ducking the whole entire sound, right? And that's cool in some aspects, but not in all aspects. In a dynamic EQ, I can duck certain frequencies, and I can duck many frequencies at the same time. That's huge. So I can keep some of the fidelity of that 808 while ducking and leaving room for my kick. And this is what it sounds like. You can hear that duck and then together with everything. That duck sound starts to go away, but what you're getting is this really crisp and clear sound from the kick, which is what we want. 2 more things on the drums, then we'll move forward. I'm using a triangle and a bell. Now, I don't use bells hardly ever, but when you're using a Meek Mill type beat, epic is the name of the game, and a bell usually does the trick for you. I've intentionally used the bell in specific areas, one being the intro to every phrase. So this is coming in right on the hook. And that's it. That's the only bell I have. I don't overdo it. And now what this does is it helps enhance and it helps complement the kick. Now if you put a triangle behind that too, you are taking care of 3 main areas. The low end with the kick, which also has a knock. The bell, which is going to get your low to mids and create a tonal sound. And the triangle, which is taking care of your high end, your ceiling, and still giving you a tonal sound. Which the overall result, like you just heard, gives you a super, super nice hit with the 808. It's a great way to introduce any phrase. And now this is the drums with the 808. feel that bounce. Those hi-hat effects are really, these hi-hat effects are really, really doing a great job of creating dynamics. And this is another thing. Take time to get real intricate with your hi-hats. Open it up. Pan different phrasings of your hi-hats in different areas. Don't rush just because you want to get it out. It's going to make a world of a difference when you put something out and an artist is listening to it and here's a hi-hat zip from the left to the right or the right to the left and pitch down at the same time. It's going to create a really awesome world. So keep that in mind. Another thing, don't overdo your open hats. They're cool, but don't overdo them. Keep it classy, keep it tasteful. One on the open, one on the offbeat, one on the onbeat, and then on the offbeat. So 4 open hi-hats in one phrasing. Okay, even then, I would be okay with cutting some out, but the beat called for it. All right, so moving on to the synths. Stacking is the name of the game. Stack your synths. A ton. Don't overdo it, obviously, but don't be afraid to stack. So if we jump into our synths, this is what it sounds like. So if we jump in even more, we've got... Alright, so I have one going dun, 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 and I have one going dun, dun, dun. So this low piano synth is giving me that, while this one is stacked on top. Same exact instrument, just an octave up and a different variation within the keys. And then finally we have this. Now, you're probably confused as to why the pattern is so weird, but together... Dynamics, people. Dynamics. Different sound. Introducing itself into a place where you can hear it, but it's not conflicting with anything. So if we move forward a little bit over to the breakdown, we're now introducing another synth, which is a little bit more aggressive, but the same sound nonetheless. And then the last thing I'm going to show you here on the synth side is this arpeggiator and this pad. These are the last pieces of melodic instrument that we add that is brand new. You can hear it just all the way through, building up with it. And what this is doing is it's keeping the ear engaged, and it's allowing the listener to hear something new, but still familiar to them. The arpeggiator is going to be the one thing that sticks out the most, but this is where sound selection comes in handy. Okay, you're going to pick sounds that fit with each other, even if they're completely different in their pattern. It's not sticking out like a sore thumb, but it's a brand new sound, and it allows you to build up. And then as you can see, I let that run through the hook, and we'll play that for you. So last thing, and I think one of the biggest tips that'll help you, it'll help you do a couple things. It'll help you become more creative because you're going to force yourself into a new space. And it's also going to enhance your drums a little bit because it's not going to be so repetitive. Do not repeat your sample throughout the entire beat unless it's called for it. Maybe it's a pad that you're using or something like that. But if you're using a sample like this, which is a trumpet, it's very prominent. It's very, like, the ear is going to notice it. Do not let it repeat. I was actually challenging with that. I was being challenged with that in this beat a couple days ago when I was working on it. How do I fix the repetitiveness? So I took it out of the verse, and I really only use it in the choruses or the hooks and then the pre-chorus. But I'm very specific on how I use it. What that's done for me is taking out of those parts, taking it out of those spots made me become more creative and kind of jump out of the box, which made me actually make this arpeggiator. So take that into consideration when you're using samples. Try to take some out and get creative with your own sounds. And then on top of that, I have a couple of FX, and this will be the last thing I go over. A couple FX here with a riser, haze, and then another riser. Don't be afraid to use these in your beats. They create great transition points, and that's super important. It allows for a smoother transition, and it allows the artist to listen to your beat and understand when it's time for them to switch their flow up, which is going to help get you placements. So that is it for this video. I hope it does well. I think we did all right. Subscribe to my channel, Tyler Genius. I will be posting more. So appreciate you guys. This will be on my channel as well as the beat breaks. And we'll see you next time.